everybody, SonGoshuaku here, and welcome to my WWE Survivor Series WarGames 2022 review. We kick things off with the Women's WarGames match. WWE Raw Women's Champion Bianca Belair teaming with Asuka, Alexa Bliss, Mia Yim, and Becky Lynch versus Damage CTRL consisting of Bayley, Io Sky, Dakota Kai with Nikki Cross and Rhea Ripley. Now, one of the things that I want to point out when it came to both the men's and women's WarGames match is that the production team were completely on point with the camera angles. Also on point was the ring announcing. So shout out to Alicia Taylor, who did the ring announcing for the women's WarGames match, and Samantha Irvin, who did the ring announcing for the men's WarGames match. Both ladies did a fantastic job. So when it came to this women's WarGames match, I wouldn't say it's the best one that I've seen, but it certainly was a great introduction in terms of introducing this match onto the main roster. All the women got to shine. You had Rhea Ripley in this match being a powerhouse, cleaning house at one point. You had Asuka coming up with some really cool strategies that eventually led to her being able to blind Rhea with the miss. You're gonna, of course, have Io Sky doing all her cool, crazy moves off the top of the cage, like the moonsault into everybody. There was things like Nikki Cross being unhinged, like she just climbs up to the top of the cage just to sit there and then jumps off to do a big old crossbody down to everyone. And once again, like I said, the production team was definitely on point by keeping the camera isolated on Nikki, so that way you don't see all the wrestlers gathering up basically waiting to catch her and stuff like that. You had the weapons being thrown in there. There's actually a really funny part. I think it was Mia Yim who basically, while all her teammates are getting the heck beat out of them, she's spending more time just throwing a bunch of weapons into the ring when there were already a bunch of weapons being thrown. I did find it funny that when Bayley takes a table and throws it into the ring, she had this look of like, you people, because the fans, of course, want tables. They're always chatting for the tables and they pop. It don't matter whether you're face or heel. Once you take that table out, you're a baby face in the fans' eyes. But you had all the cool weapon spots, whether Damage CTRL was taking the table and basically sandwiching Bianca Belair between that and the cage. You had the cool spots where I think Io Sky had the trash can put over her upper body, and you have Becky Lynch jumping off the top rope, doing her top rope leg drop, jumping from the top of the rope onto Io, who's in the trash can, so that was cool. There's even a part where Rhea is in a sleeper hold by Mia Yim, and she ends up taking both her and Mia out of the match when she ends up basically jumping onto a ladder that breaks in half while, you know, both her and Mia are on it, so that took them out of the match. But I really want to focus here on the finish of the match because the sequence was really cool. We get this great visual of Bianca and Becky standing together against all three members of Damage CTRL, Io, Dakota, and Bayley, which was very reminiscent of where this all started back in August at SummerSlam. All basically the 2 to 3 of them all go at it, and there's some really cool unintentional double teaming moves here from Bianca and Becky. So Bianca attempts to do the KOD on Dakota Kai, but Dakota Kai lands on her feet only to end up right into Becky Lynch's manhandle slam, aka the rock bottom. Then from there, the opposite happens, where Becky goes for the manhandle slam on Io Sky, but she escapes it only to end up into the KOD from Bianca Belair. Then for the finish of the match, Becky ends up putting Dakota and Io onto the table, and Bayley tries to save them only to get hit with a KOD from Bianca. And let me tell you, this just basically had Bayley all contorted or whatever, her body when it hit the cage. And there was a few of those spots we saw here where Bianca did a few power bombs, and it just looked really messed up, like Dakota Kai got her neck messed up. There was one point where Bayley was grabbing at her neck. But yeah, it is in this part where it's like Bayley's body ends up crashing feet first into the side of the cage, then ricochets off the side of the cage into the ropes, then ricochets off the ropes back into the cage, and then falls down finally to the canvas. Now, at this point, Becky has made her way all the way up to the top of the cage, and she does a leg drop right straight down onto the table, landing on both Dakota and Io Sky. Well, I guess she was attempting a leg drop, but she basically lands butt first right onto Dakota's midsection, which, hey, if Becky's like, 120 pounds or more, that's still a full 120-pound grown human being landing from 15 to 20 feet right on your gut. That's gotta hurt. And I think she also got most of, Io's leg on that. But this is what allows Team Bianca to get the 1, 2, 3, and the match is over. And thus, I believe the whole feud with Damage CTRL is over. Overall, the storyline I felt kind of dragged on too much with the whole Damage CTRL, because just how many more times can you have Bayley constantly losing to Bianca over and over? But overall, I thought this was a fantastic way to finish this match. Like I said, all the women look great. They got to do their moves, and I think this was a really good way to finish this. Coming up next, I wouldn't mind seeing Bayley versus Becky, because that's one of the few matches out of the combinations of the 4 horsewomen that we have yet to see, and I think it's a great story to tell when you look at how Becky ended up leaving in 2020 and Bayley just had that huge run of dominance, and then when Becky came back, Bayley was the one injured, and now Becky had this big run, and now, Bayley comes back and now Becky's the one injured. You can tell this unique story between them because it's, like I said, one of the few things that hasn't been done over and over when it comes to the 4 horsewomen, and I'm looking forward moving on to see Bianca take on hopefully Rhea Ripley at WrestleMania, and hopefully finally get that win against Charlotte Flair if they do it before then or at WrestleMania. Overall, not the best women's War Games match I think I've seen in terms of WWE. In fact, I was there live in 2019 at the Allstate Arena when they had that match there, and I thought that was even better. That's where Dakota Kai ended up turning heel, and a lot of the women in this match was involved in that one as well. But this one was still really good, like I said, introduction to the main roster. And one thing that's really great is they did protect a lot of the key players like Rhea, and I thought Bianca Belair, I was like, oh, you go, girl, because you're up here, the champion, and she's going to show that she's the Iron Woman, starting off showing that she's got that gas tank to go 40 minutes plus in a match like this, so that was awesome to see as well. So on the post-Survivor Series 2022 edition of Monday Night Raw, we had a strong opening segment that began the feud of Bayley versus Becky Lynch. Now, while the segment didn't do much once again to portray Damage CTRL as being a strong faction that's running roughshod all over WWE, due to Becky being one woman holding her own in a pretty lengthy brawl against 3 women and Damage CTRL for all the reasons I mentioned previously. I'm looking forward to this first time true program against 2 of the best from WWE's 4 horsewomen. Also, it is so good to finally have babyface Becky Lynch back. We get a backstage segment where Roman tells Jey not to worry about it in terms of Sami Zayn, because the previous night he had heard him talking to Kevin Owens, and when Kevin Owens left and Jey Uso came out, because he was eavesdropping in on there, Sami lied to his face. And from here, Roman basically says he will see to it himself to make sure to look Sami in the eyes and make sure that he is not lying. And when Jey leaves, Roman tells Paul Heyman to call Sami into the Bloodline locker room. I love the Bloodline storyline, and Sami Zayn has added so much freshness to this, and this is something that played out as the show went on. Next up, we had AJ Styles versus Finn Balor for the second time in WWE, and that's really cool because it's the second time. One of the things, if you followed my reviews over the years, is I'm not a fan of WWE doing these constant rematches for months on end, dozens and dozens of matches. Only can I think of a very few matches in WWE history that I've really enjoyed back to back, like CM Punk versus John Cena, Randy Orton versus Christian, where these guys, even though they spammed it for several months straight, they somehow found a way to keep each match more interesting. And so it is refreshing to see here in WWE that, yeah, they actually gave us this match back at TLC 2017, and they waited 5 years before giving us another match. However, I don't think this match was as good as that match from, 5 years ago. That was, of course, the Demon Finn Balor versus AJ Styles, but this match was a decent sequel, but I do feel that we've seen AJ Styles in and Finn Balor not only have that much better match with each other, but other better matches with others. But it was still a very competitive, really well wrestling match. So like I said, not the highest, and I think we could see these go, but overall it was definitely a decent match. And surprisingly, AJ Styles ends up taking the victory. There was some weird stat that had surfaced online that I didn't even know, something about like AJ Styles hadn't won a singles match on pay-per-view since like 2019, and that's crazy to think about it. I thought they were going to give the victory to Finn Balor, but no, they give it to AJ Styles. He gets the phenomenal forearm, wins. Even Rhea Ripley didn't play a role in this match because of, I guess, to sell the effects of WarGames, and the OC ended up taking out Dominic and Damian Priest. So we'll see where this goes from here. I am really enjoying the Judgment Day storyline, especially with the whole Dominic Mysterio and Rhea Ripley showing up at Rey Mysterio's house to jump him during Thanksgiving. That was fantastic, hilarious stuff. I wish WWE do more segments like that. But overall, the Judgment Day, while they are building steams, there's only so many times I feel you can have them lose these big matches. So, I mean, had Judgment Day been booked very strong in all the big giant matches they had throughout the year, and Finn Balor loses this one, then I think I would have been a little bit more okay with that. But hey, at the end of the day, this is good. AJ Styles gets a big win and maybe hopefully gets put back into the main event picture scene as we move on to 2023. Next up for the WWE SmackDown Women's Championship, Rowdy Ronda Rousey with Shayna Baszler versus Shotzi Blackheart. I'm gotta be honest, this was the weakest match on the show. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm a Ronda Rousey fan going back to UFC, and I think what she's been able to do in the WWE with her lack of experience has been phenomenal. And then when it comes to Shotzi, I like her enthusiasm, but man, this match did not click. There was just some things that were not coordinated well between the two. Like there's one spot where Shotzi does, I guess, is going for a tornado DDT from outside the ring, where Ronda is on the apron, but unfortunately it doesn't connect well. I don't know if it was a miscommunication on one person's end or both, but it just didn't look well. And hey, I give them bonus points for trying. There's a spot they do where they obviously have these planted fans in the front row, and Shotzi throws Shayna and Ronda over to in front of them, and she ends up like getting on top of the barricade, jumping on them, and crossbodies everybody. So all three of them end up on top of the planted fans. But man, I don't think the crowd was feeling this match. The audience in attendance, of course, they were in Boston, break out a "We want Sasha Banks" chant. So that should tell you exactly as far as where the audience felt in terms of caring about this match. And of course, I think one of the things that was cool, there was a part where Shotzi jumps off of the ring and Ronda, I guess, catches her and turns it into a judo throw, but it kind of came off confusing in real time. But when you watch in slow motion, you're able to see, oh, okay, that's how it happened. Ending sequence I thought was cool. Ronda does a judo throw from the top rope, puts her in the armbar, and Shotzi taps out. Yeah, but man, just not good. One thing that was cool, Shotzi did dedicate this to her father who had passed away. So definitely, I know he's got to be very proud of his girl making it to the WWE. But yeah, this match, honestly, like I said, it was the weakest match. And I would say that if you have to skip one match on this show, I recommend this one. There's definitely been some better matches, especially with Ronda, like Survivor Series 2018 against Charlotte and other ones that she's had. And hopefully things can work out better for Shotzi, because I do like that WWE, in terms of Triple H's booking now, is trying to bring her back to what worked in NXT versus Vince McMahon, who took away everything that made Shotzi special from the tank and basically the entrance and her enthusiastic energy. So we have another backstage segment, and Roman Reigns is basically asking Sami, did you talk to KO the previous night? Which, when you think about it, is kind of funny because you would have had plenty of time to browse social media or go back and watch the footage to see it and everything. So I thought that was kind of funny, but Sami basically ends up explaining that he didn't want to distract from Jey Uso knowing how hot he can get. Basically, it's when it comes to Sami, so he was trying to keep the peace, but he says he is thankful for for the Bloodline, basically adopting him into the family, and Roman Reigns gets up and gives Sami Zayn a hug. But as the camera zooms in while Sami's back is turned during the hug, you see Roman go from a smile to a frown, and I love it. Once again, this is a great reason of why the storytelling for this whole Bloodline thing leading into this War Games match has just been fantastic. Next up was a triple threat match for the WWE United States Championship as Seth Freakin Rollins defends the US title against Bobby Lashley and Austin Theory. Now, storylines building up to it. I think Bobby Lashley has looked like an absolute beast, and it's been a little confusing as to whether him or Seth are babyface or heel. So that's been a little bit of confusing in the dynamic from that standpoint. But obviously, both great main eventers. I was not a fan of the booking of Austin Theory, as I felt Triple H approving that one. It made Austin Theory look like the dumbest Money in the Bank cash in from a storyline perspective ever. Like, why would you cash in on the mid-card championship? And yeah, I know he mentions that Roman Reigns and the Usos bloodline are always constantly interfering, but you still had months. Why not wait until they are vulnerable? There's going to be a point where they're vulnerable. So was not a fan of that, but I do appreciate that afterwards they've tried to make Austin Theory into a more serious character, and that's something that definitely needed to happen because the way both Triple H and Vince McMahon were booking him just wasn't really, I think, creating him to be seen as being credible in the fans' eyes. Now, when it came to this match, there was a lot of cool stuff, like Bobby Lashley right out the gate clotheslines Theory right out of the ring, and when he tries to get back in, it's Seth Rollins who clotheslined him back out of the ring. Some really cool spots here is what I thought was Bobby Lashley put both Seth Rollins and Austin Theory in the Hurt Lock. That was cool. There was another spot where both men are basically down on all fours trying to get back up, and Seth Rollins sneaks in and he basically runs up to Austin Theory, gets on top of his back, jumps off to deliver a stomp to Bobby Lashley. But in the ending sequence, Seth Rollins, he ends up doing his superplex to Austin Theory, and then when he picks him up for the Falcon Arrow, Bobby Lashley comes out and does the spear right to Seth Rollins, and as they both go down, Seth and Theory, Austin Theory is still hanging on to Seth Rollins and rolls over to get the 1, 2, 3 and leaves with the United States Championship. And you know what? While I didn't think they were going to take the title so soon off of Seth Rollins, this right here was actually, I think, the best move, because you can have Seth Rollins and Bobby Lashley, who are main eventers, go on to do some big main event programs, while you take Austin Theory and rebuild him up as the United States champion, and perhaps build him up more seriously than what Vince and Triple H himself had previously done in terms of booking him. I'm fine with the way the match ended. Overall, this was definitely one of the best matches on the show from top to bottom. Really enjoyed this one. I would even say this was hands down the best of the 3 non-War Games match on this card. So we get one final backstage segment where Roman tells Jey that he looked into Sami's eyes and he saw everything he needed to see. Bravo storytelling once again, leading into the main event. The men's War Games match. The Bloodline, consisting of WWE Universal World Champion Roman Reigns and the longest reigning WWE Tag Team Champions in history, Jimmy and Jey, the Usos, Solo Sikoa, and Sami Zayn versus Kevin Owens, Drew McIntyre, and the Brawling Brutes consisted of Sheamus, Butch, and Ridge Holland. Alright, one of the funny things I thought about this match before it even gets going is that Roman Reigns basically sits down. He's like, I ain't sitting up here for the 20 plus minutes or so it takes me to get in this match. The Tribal Chief sits and only gets up when it's time for the Tribal Chief to do Tribal Chief business, cause he the one. I loved it. Basically, Roman just does such a great job with his storytelling and doesn't have to say much. That's something, once again, you saw all throughout this match, where they would zoom in on his face, where he would look concerned or he would smirk. Just fantastic, just showing what he can do with facial expression. So Jey Uso and Butch end up starting the match, which I figured because they would be the workhorses of the team that would end up going like the 40 plus minutes. Everyone got a time to shine in this match. Drew McIntyre, Sheamus, everyone was doing their thing, but the biggest key element to this WarGames match, it really wasn't as action, I would say, intensive with all the big spots and the weapons as you saw in the women's match, but what you got out of this one was fantastic, excellent storytelling where the tension kept constantly building and building and building. So one of the few key moments is Jey Uso and Sami Zayn. When it comes time, because there was the WarGames advantage given to the babyfaces, they're beating down on Jey Uso. Jimmy is quick to run out and go help his brother when it's the Bloodline's turn next to let a member come. And Roman, once again, like I said, fantastic storytelling. He puts his hand out and goes like, and he just points over to Sami and tells him to go. And that was good, because what better way to test Sami Zayn's loyalty to the Bloodline than to have Sami work with the number one person that despises him the most. And when we get into where everyone is in the WarGames, actually there's a really cool choreographed spot in this WarGames match where, and yeah, I say choreographed because it looks choreographed, but it was still a fun spot where they're doing Sheamus's 10 beats where he tangles them up into the rope and just starts doing the whole, beating of the chest. Well, you have all the baby faces do that to all of the Bloodline. That was pretty cool. But one of the things in this match, when it came to Jey Uso and Sami, there's a spot in the match where Jey Uso goes for the super kick to Butch, but Butch gets out the way, and this causes Jey Uso to lay out Sami with the super kick. And basically, you had where the fans were really into the Bloodline and the Usos, the whole Usi and Sami Uso chants. So when he ends up going down, Sami that is, Jimmy is quick to try and go and help him out. And Jey stops him and says, nah, forget about him. And the crowd erupts into an a-hole chant to Jey. And there's parts where they just can't get along. They're pushing each other even before that. So this is just, once again, really good, fantastic storytelling. I really enjoy too when there's the part of the match where Roman ends up coming in last, and he just comes in like, what's the meme? The Oprah meme where it's like, you get this, you get this. Well, Roman came in with that whole upper smack thing, and he was laying out all the baby faces like, you get one, you get one, you get one, you get one, because it's the tribal chief, and that's the way the tribal chief does business. Gotta put up the ones. Again, loving the whole Roman Reigns Bloodline stuff. But yeah, that was really cool. You even had moments where you had Kevin Owens looking strong, hitting the stunners. In the end, it actually comes down to Roman and Kevin Owens going at it, and Roman's trying his best. And there's a part where Kevin Owens gets the better of Roman and lays him out with a stunner, and the referee comes in 1, 2, but no 3, because Sami Zayn, showing his loyalty, actually grabs the referee by the arm. And it's at this moment you're seeing like, oh, he's got the loyalty. So Kevin Owens gets up and he starts arguing with Sami Zayn like, I'm your best friend of 25 years. Why in the world are you helping out these people? This is your family? Is that who your family is? Now from here, Jimmy Uso comes in with a super kick, but his foot is caught by Kevin Owens. And at this moment, Sami Zayn gives Kevin Owens the low blow and puts him into the corner. It's at this moment he's having a hesitation. He's thinking about it. Should he do it? This is his best friend of 25 years. But if you follow their history in WWE, and I'm pretty sure probably even before that, Kevin Owens has stabbed Sami Zayn a lot in the back. So honestly, I can't blame Sami Zayn. I mean, Kevin Owens has done how many despicable things in WWE, whether it be his best friend or not. I mean, look at this past year. He called out Stone Cold Steve Austin out of retirement, starting stuff with him when Austin did nothing to him. So Sami Zayn, he ends up looking at Roman Reigns and he tells him, watch me, watch this for what I'm going to do for the Bloodline. And he goes ahead and delivers the haluva kick to Kevin Owens. And at this point, he drags Kevin Owens' unconscious body in position to where he eyes at Jey Uso and tells him, basically with his eyes, nods him, finish him. And then Jey Uso looks back at Sami, nods his head, and he goes on top and delivers the big splash for the 1, 2, 3. Jey Uso picks up the win for the Bloodline thanks to the help of Sami Zayn. Now, if that wasn't fantastic storytelling enough as it is, there's the celebration because Roman Reigns, and while the fans may have booed a little bit because of what Sami did to Kevin Owens, they immediately cheer when Roman hugs Sami, but an even bigger cheer when Jey Uso embraces Sami Zayn, not once, but a second time, to the point where he picks up Sami and kind of swings him around. So that's like a big hug, the type of hug you give to somebody you ain't seen in years, that you were good friends with. Oh boy, at this point, the fans are erupting in cheers of Sami Uso, and it's almost like it's a touching moment because, yeah, he finally earned the respect of the Bloodline, even Jey Uso, who doubted him the most. And you have all 5 guys in the ring with their arms raised, celebrating, and you got Michael Cole, gotta give him props on commentary. He was selling, it's like, oh, he sold his soul. How could that dastardly Sami Zayn sell his soul? Kevin Owens, who is his best friend for the past 25 years. Once again, if we choose to ignore what Kevin Owens has done in that history from a WWE standpoint in the storyline, but I digress. It is almost like a touching moment, but it's like, man, he pushed his best friend to the side for the sake of the Bloodline. Like I said, I'm not surprised, right, given the history, but overall, this was fantastic storytelling, and it goes back to what I have been saying about Roman Reigns and the Bloodline for the last couple of years. Man, this is what it is all about. When you have those storylines and you have those characters that connect, pro wrestling is at an all-time high. And yeah, I know a lot of people are getting tired of the Bloodline winning, and there are others like me who are enjoying the ride. And even in my Clash review, I said that I don't know where you go. And that's only because I'm thinking, okay, Roman's going to be gone for months on end. They're not going to add anybody. And Jimmy and Jey are just going to be there as tag champs, like the very way they were doing it after WrestleMania for most of the middle of this year. I'm like, no, I don't want to see that. But thankfully, that's not how it worked out. Roman Reigns has consistently been on TV every other week or so. And then you've had Jimmy and Jey basically still doing their things, becoming the longest reigning tag team champions in history. And I like the addition of Solo Sikoa. And then you have Sami Zayn, who has added so much more new life to the Bloodline. And the storyline has been an absolute joy to follow week in and week out. And now we get the next development where boys, basically, they're trusting Sami Zayn. And eventually this is most likely going to lead to him and Kevin Owens. So I'm looking forward to seeing the Bloodline storyline continue into WrestleMania season for early 2023. Now on the Monday Night Raw after, I was glad to see that Kevin Owens brought up his history of stabbing Sami in the back multiple times during their friendship. This is the reason that he doesn't blame Sami for choosing the Bloodline over him. Bringing up history has been constantly one of the best things I have enjoyed about Triple H taking over creative. It just adds so much to the storylines when you don't ignore the history between the characters, plus extra points because we know that these guys are close in real life. That said, it seems WWE is indeed headed for a third Royal Rumble Championship match between Kevin Owens and Roman Reigns. Overall, like I said, when it comes to the WarGames matches, I felt the women delivered a much better match from an action standpoint with a little bit of storytelling in the match versus the men's WarGames match, which more so delivered on the storytelling aspect and a little less of like the high action. Both matches were good, but man, this storytelling was just fantastic, and that is what I feel makes this Bloodline story going strong. Glad to see them pick up the win and seeing where things go next. This was not the best Survivor Series, but it was a much needed improvement compared to last year's Survivor Series, and I'm thankful that Triple H has introduced the WarGames concept to freshen things up, because Survivor Series is one of the oldest WWE premium live events, pay-per-views, specials, whatever you want to call it, that's been around since the late 80s, and so why not keep this pay-per-view or this show strong by adding new new concepts. So I'm looking forward to seeing how this develops as the years go on. Hope you enjoyed my review. Let me know what you thought in the comments below, and I will be back most likely for a WWE Royal Rumble 2023 review. Until then, like, comment, share, and subscribe, and hit the notification bell so that you are notified when I release new content. And all my social media platforms are in the description below.